I'll definitely have to finish installing the server updates after 5 o'clock this evening to avoid disturbing the office staff, so I won't be home until 6:30 or so, Mark Green explained to his wife Amanda, trying not to sound too tired. He was already used to days when work tasks seemed endless, and he planned to return home late. It was starting to get dark outside, and his office lamp softly illuminated the papers on his desk, creating a cozy work atmosphere. Amanda's somewhat sleepy voice came from the other end of the line. It was almost 3:30 in the afternoon, and judging by her calm tone, she had only recently woken up. "It's not a problem," she answered slowly, drawing out the words as often happens after a short sleep. Amanda always looked tired after night shifts, and although her morning was actually late afternoon, it was her usual time to wake up. They worked different shifts. Mark worked as an IT manager. His working hours were standard, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. By contrast, Amanda was a nurse in the intensive care unit and worked 3 12-hour night shifts a week from 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning. This schedule was not easy for both of them, but they learned to adapt. Sometimes this even worked to their advantage. They had free morning hours or unexpectedly long weekends. True, Amanda sometimes complained about having to work on holidays and weekends, but she had greater flexibility in scheduling, which allowed her, for example, to work extra hours to cover additional expenses such as vacations or important purchases. "Did you hear back from that new guy?" "What's his name?" Mark asked, deciding to change the topic to a lighter one. His voice sounded relaxed. They were used to talking about this frankly. "Greg," Amanda answered after a short pause, as if trying to remember. "Yes, he wrote to me this morning. Since you won't be home before I leave anyway, I figured today might be a good day for us to meet for the first time, if that's okay with you," she explained with just a hint of questioning in her voice. "He suggested meeting me at McDonald's at exit 8 on my way to work. This is a good public place where we can talk and see if there is some chemistry between us." Mark nodded approvingly, although she couldn't see it. "Sounds like a smart plan," he said, smiling slightly. "I take it this means you're done with that young guy?" he asked, clarifying with a hint of slight relief in his voice. "James," Amanda corrected him. "And yes, I'm done. It was fun while it lasted, but the last couple of weeks he had become too intrusive. When he told me that he seemed to be starting to experience real feelings, that was the end of it all. You know how I feel about this." "I know," Mark agreed, understanding her position. "And you're right. There's no point in letting this get to the point where anyone gets hurt. It just always amazes me how guys can ruin such good things," he added with a grin. Amanda laughed. Her laugh was light but sincere. Then her tone changed slightly, taking on a note of playful seriousness. "You mean you blame them for falling in love with me?" she asked with obvious mockery, enjoying the situation. Mark hesitated for a moment, then muttered, Uh, uh, no, of course not. You're amazing, and you know it. It's just strange that they can't accept the situation and just enjoy what they have. They could be happy, but they're not. They always need more and end up with nothing." Amanda laughed again, her laughter louder. "I understand what you mean. It's just fun to make you squirm a little sometimes." She was silent for a moment and then added, "Okay, the bus will be here soon. I love you. We'll talk later. I'll call you before my shift starts and tell you how the meeting went." To the outside world, the Greens looked like a very typical little family. Mark was 30, Amanda was 28. They had 2 children, an 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. The kids played baseball and dance, and the parents juggled different activities and kept to a schedule. The Greens took family outings and vacations together. The couple went on dates and weekends, just the two of them, and the whole world saw a postcard example of the nuclear American family. Most of their conservative friends and relatives would be shocked to learn that they were not, in fact, a completely typical family. Amanda had sex with other men with Mark's full knowledge and permission, and had been doing so for over 2 years. You see, Amanda and Mark got married very young, and Amanda honestly wasn't ready for the commitment. She grew up in an ultra-conservative, extremely repressive family where, even to this day, Amanda's mother whispered the word sex in conversations with her adult daughters. Amanda grew up thinking sex was bad and dirty, and she felt shame for any sexual urges or desires. She and Mark had explored so much that it was actually difficult for her to change her attitude. But her views on sex remained unhealthy, to say the least. In some self-destructive rebellion, Amanda cheated on Mark several years ago. The affair lasted a couple of months, until, in the midst of a minor quarrel, she burst into tears and confessed everything. She wasn't even attracted to a guy, but he noticed her, she craved recognition, and ended up doing things she bitterly regretted. The affair was very difficult for their marriage, but Mark loved his wife very much and was determined to make things right. They spent a lot of time discussing, opening up to each other, exploring the root causes of cheating, and seemed to have made real progress. So when Amanda cheated on him again, Mark was devastated. This actually happened a few more times. She never had another real romance, but Amanda dated or fooled around with another guy, sometimes even at events where Mark was present. She immediately burst into tears and admitted that no later than the next day, often even the same day, she was truly terrible at what she had done. But no matter how sincerely she repented, no matter how much she cried, no matter how bad she felt, it always seemed that her new deception was always only a matter of time. It seemed that the only possible future for the Greens was divorce. Mark simply could not continue when his wife seemed to be pathologically prone to cheating. He loved his children very much and was willing to do anything to keep them from growing up in a dysfunctional family. But how could he live with a woman he couldn't trust? And then one day, a desperate idea came to his mind. Mark told Amanda that he was willing to open up their marriage to her if she agreed to some rules about how he would work. He will allow her to have sex with other men as she sees fit, but to do this, she will have to remove all the lies, all the meanness, all the deceit from the equation. If she was going to have sex with other guys, she needed to tell Mark who she was with and how long she planned to be gone, and if plans changed, she needed to let him know. She will always be required to make it a point to come home and have hot sex with him after she meets another guy, and this cannot be sex on duty without pretending to be tired or disinterested. She has to be delighted and passionate about it. She wasn't allowed to do anything with other guys that she wouldn't do with Mark or that she had yet to try with him. She had to always be open and tell Mark everything she did. There would never be any secrets about boys or sex. She had to make every effort to invite him whenever possible, which meant they had sex together with other guys from time to time. And finally, Mark reserved the right to veto any sex, any particular encounter, or any particular partner. Amanda tearfully agreed to the terms, grateful that her husband loved her enough to try to find a way to save their marriage despite her duress. To be honest, Mark absolutely despised the idea from the start. It was incredibly humiliating to sit and play darts with strangers while his wife did disgusting things with other men. The thought of her doing this was devaluing, nauseating, and infuriating. But if he hadn't allowed it, the marriage would have been over. He could no longer live with betrayal, lies, and ignorance. If he didn't open his marriage this way, he would have to end it altogether, and Mark really didn't want to settle for seeing his kids every other weekend for the next 10 or 12 years. So Mark swallowed his pride and, to a large extent, his self-respect. Even so, after that first weekend, he didn't know if he could keep doing it. The mental images and knowledge of what his wife was doing was driving him crazy. In desperation, he began surfing the internet, finding forums where men shared their wives with others, and began reading their stories. He was surprised to realize that some men liked nothing more than the idea of their wives having sex with others. And so, for the sake of self-preservation, Mark decided to focus on the sex itself. Consider your wife to be something like your personal star, to take comfort in the fact that no matter what she did, she always returned to him, that her heart belonged to him alone, and to emphasize that whenever she was with other men, he was rewarded with truly outstanding sex. Of course, Mark gradually began to not only agree to, but even seek out, his wife having sex with other men, to the point where it became his greatest perversion. There were clear differences in Amanda's mentality when she played with other men, and Mark clearly benefited from this. Somehow, the two of them managed to move forward, and in the 2+ years that their marriage was open, they grew incredibly close. Along the way, Amanda developed her own rules. Most of the men she had sex with were guys she and Mark picked up at a bar for sex, or those she met and looked up online. If the guy was selfish, pushy, and disrespectful to her, she would never date him a second time. Over time, she accumulated enough marginal and unsuccessful experiences that she switched to a system of checking guys primarily in public places. If they could continue the conversation and she left the meeting with a positive feeling, only then would she agree to have sex. Moreover, Amanda made it clear to the guys that she was married and that this was just casual sex for fun. She often mentioned her husband, made it clear that she was emotionally unavailable. She once let a situation with a friend with benefits get out of control, and the mutual feelings she developed with a married man led to unpleasant consequences, the emotional end of this arrangement. So from that point on, as soon as there was even the slightest hint that the guy was having any feelings, or if she found herself getting attached at all, she would end the situation. This happened just a few days ago with James, with whom Amanda had been playing for about 6 weeks. The two of them hung out, watched movies, and had sex. It was light and superficial fun, but James's admission that he was developing feelings prompted her to stop it immediately. Mark had seen her do this before and was absolutely sure that she would never take a call or text from James again. This is how it was supposed to work. Mark finished his updates at 5:45, which meant he'd be home a little earlier than planned, probably 6:15. It wasn't like he'd be able to see Amanda before she left, no matter what. As an IQ nurse, she had to be on the unit half an hour before her shift to get a report from the nurse she was replacing. Besides, Amanda was the kind of person who believed that if you were on time, you were late even though the hospital was only half an hour's drive from home. She would be exhausted if she left in less than 45 minutes in advance, and she usually tried to allocate even more time. Mark usually got home from work around 5:30, which gave him time to kiss his wife goodbye and maybe chat with her for a few minutes before she left for her shift. He had never seen her be late for anything in his life. Knowing Amanda, she probably met this Greg guy at McDonald's at 5:15, 5:30 at the latest. She drank a milkshake, they chatted, and she went to work. If things go well, she might hire her new boyfriend. Mark decided he didn't want to interrupt her, so he got in the car, turned on the air conditioning, and drove home. When 6 o'clock arrived, he sent a quick message. "I had to leave a little earlier than planned, didn't want to interrupt you," he typed. "Already halfway home. I hope everything goes well." About 30 seconds later, his phone buzzed with a response. "We're chatting. I'll call you when I leave." "Okay," he replied. "Love you." Years of experience told him that Amanda must be close to drawing the line. She couldn't stay at McDonald's until after 6 and make it in time to get the report. This means that everything should go well. Amanda had probably been there for half an hour, if not more. If the guy was an asshole, she would have left by now, so that was a good sign. To be honest, Mark preferred his wife to see one or two regular guys. While there has always been a risk of emotional attachment, it would be good to have some known factors in the equation. It gave Mark a good idea of how long this whole thing would take, what kind of mindset Amanda would be in when she got home, and it helped him not worry so much about some complete stranger being a complete jerk. Amanda reminded the children about the leftover food in the refrigerator and kissed them goodbye. "Kelsey," she said to the teenage girl next door, "Mark should be here no later than 6:30, so you won't have to stay long." The girl looked up from her textbook and waved back. "It's okay, Mrs. J. We know what to do." It was definitely nice to have a responsible child on short notice on days like today when the Green schedules didn't quite line up. Having Kelsey as a neighbor made it very convenient, and the girl was generally good-natured and easy to work with. At 14, she didn't drive a car yet, but it didn't matter because she could just walk up. Amanda checked her phone at 10 minutes past 5 in the evening as she got into the Pathfinder. In that case, she'd end up at McDonald's just before 5:30, which would give her plenty of time to have a quick chat with this Greg guy. She had, of course, seen his photograph. The man had short, cropped brown hair, so dark it was almost black, a neatly trimmed beard to match, a square jaw, and a tall, powerful build. She knew he was a former Marine who now worked in a warehouse. It was obvious that he had retained his muscles. Although Amanda had never liked really muscular guys, Greg certainly looked good. As she drove, Amanda frowned slightly. She would prefer to make a first impression by wearing something more flattering than a robe. The set she wore featured foxes on a lavender background. While they were quirky and fun, it was difficult to look truly sexy in scrubs the way they fit, or rather the way they didn't fit. As usual before their first meeting, Amanda felt butterflies in her stomach. She knew for sure that many men found her attractive, but despite this, she always worried about being good enough for the person she dated. You'd think that after having sex with a bunch of different guys, she wouldn't have any confidence issues. No man had ever given her anything but glowing praise. However, for some reason, she was always worried that she simply wouldn't be able to measure up. Standing 5 feet 7 inches, Amanda was an attractive woman. She had dirty blonde hair that fell in curls over her shoulders, sparkling blue eyes that would captivate anyone who looked into them for too long, and an athletic body with prominent curves. She insisted on breast augmentation after their son turned 4 because breastfeeding had caused her breasts to sag significantly. Amanda also took the opportunity to switch to a DD cup at the time Mark tried to convince her that she was beautiful and didn't need surgery, but it was so important to her that he relented. This boosted her self-confidence dramatically, so her husband now considered it a worthwhile decision. To this day, Amanda admitted that she had a facelift, but denied the rest of the surgery. It was one of the few vanities to which she indulged. She was halfway out the door when her phone vibrated. Amanda hated texting and driving, but she still took a quick glance at her phone. It was Greg. "I came back from work late. I'm home, but haven't had time to take a shower yet. Could you please come here? I live 10 minutes from the exit." Amanda frowned. That wasn't the point. She was more than embarrassed to go to a stranger's house, although she had never met him before. Besides, it would add 20 minutes to her current commute to work. Although she left early enough for it to work, she won't be able to chat for long. She typed out a response, trying not to get too annoyed. "What happened to the meeting in public?" "You don't have to come inside. We can just chat in the driveway," came the reply. "I wouldn't be good company if I was sweaty and dirty." Crap. Amanda became much more selective about the guys she dated. Greg seemed like a really good prospect. He wasn't someone who seemed to have much to say, but he had a confidence about him that she liked. It didn't hurt that his tests were up to date. She thought that if she refused to change the schedule, she would probably have to go back to the drawing board. Experience has shown that if you miss the chance to meet for any reason, most guys won't try again. She sighed and typed a response. "Okay, send me your address. I won't have to talk long since I'll have to go to work." When the 1-mile exit sign appeared on the interstate, her phone vibrated again. "Great! I can take a quick shower and be ready for you. Address, 21315 Oakcrest Lane. There's a black Toyota in the garage. You can park behind it. See you soon." Amanda exhaled in frustration. She hated last-minute changes and uncertainty in life. The Pathfinder pulled into Greg's driveway at 5:36 p.m. The house seemed small but well kept. The yard was in perfect condition. Everything looked clean. The garage was open, just like Greg said. Amanda parked behind his black car. The house was located on a decent piece of land, about half an acre of flat territory, and rows of trees formed something like a natural fence between this house and the neighboring one. It was a nice residential area with many houses, but they weren't too close to each other. Amanda got out of the SUV and pulled out her phone, but before she could dial or call Greg, the door to the house opened and he walked out, waving at her. "Hi," he greeted, coming closer. His gesture was a little strange. Amanda couldn't tell if he wanted to shake her hand or hug her. She decided that a handshake would be too formal for a meeting that could end in sex. Having made her decision, The blonde stepped forward and quickly hugged the large man before stepping back to be back next to her SUV. "Hello to you too," she replied. If Amanda had to choose one word to describe Greg, it would be imposing. His facial expression was very serious and concentrated. When he smiled, it seemed that his smile did not reach his eyes. He was much taller than her. Greg was 6 feet 3 inches tall, with broad shoulders and a muscular body visible even under his t-shirt. A light scent of spicy cologne emanated from him as she hugged him. "Thanks for stopping by," he said, coming closer. "I didn't want to meet you sweaty." Although Greg had a deep voice, he spoke quietly, but there was a confidence in his tone, as if he had no doubt that she would agree to his request. He took a step back, leaving her enough space. Amanda recognized this gesture as an attempt to make her meeting comfortable, and she liked it. However, even when he just stood relaxed, the hairs on Amanda's neck stood up a little. There was something predatory in his gaze and demeanor, like a wild animal assessing its prey. "You're very sexy, Amanda," he said casually. "I was worried that you looked better in photographs than in real life, but they didn't tell the whole story. You're much hotter in real life." Amanda felt her cheeks flush. She pointed to her outfit. "In medical uniform?" she asked doubtfully. "It's just flattery. Nobody looks good in scrubs." A barely noticeable smile appeared on Greg's lips. "You look good in them. I can't see everything, but I can already tell there's a great body underneath, and I look forward to seeing it in person." Amanda's eyes widened a little at how direct the man was. Other men might say things like that and come off as rude to her, but Greg just seemed strong, like he was making objective observations about everyday things, not how he wanted to see her naked within 2 minutes of meeting her. We'll see," she muttered, feeling out of place. She tried to change the subject, moving on to more general issues such as work, family, and interests. Although Greg was far from verbose, he answered all her questions immediately and gave her the opportunity to speak. She learned that he was single, 32 years old, and had a sister who lived 2 hours away, but no other family. Amanda told him about her family, her husband, her children, and their open marriage. They continued talking as they stood in the front of her SUV, and Amanda suddenly felt comfortable and at ease talking to the man, as if he were an old friend. He seemed really interested in everything she said, as if it mattered to him. This, of course, did not prevent the fact that Greg literally oozes sexuality. Several times Amanda was forced to concentrate on her, or his words, as her thoughts involuntarily returned to the upcoming sex with him. Amanda's phone vibrated. "I managed to leave a little earlier than planned. I didn't want to interfere," came a message from Mark. "Already on the way home. I hope everything goes well." "Damn, it's already 6 o'clock. Amanda hastily typed a response. "We're chatting. I'll call you when I leave." "Okay," came the answer. "Love you. My husband is checking on me," Greg commented with a slight smile, noticing her actions. "Yes," Amanda confirmed, feeling slightly embarrassed. "He left work earlier than planned. He just wanted to know if everything was okay, thinking I had already left." She frowned. "By the way, I really need to get going," she continued. "I have to go to work. But it was nice to meet you. Thank you for supporting the idea of the first meeting in a public place." Greg gave her one of his intense smiles. "I'm glad you stopped by." He took a small step forward and opened his arms for another hug. This time Amanda didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and allowed the big man to embrace her. As Greg held her in his arms, he whispered in her ear, "I'm very glad. You are such an attractive woman." Amanda's heart began to beat faster as she reluctantly began to pull away from the embrace of this virtual stranger. What was she doing? After all, she knew him for just a few minutes. "Before you go, I need something from you," Greg said quietly, lowering his voice. "What exactly?" Amanda asked, stepping back slightly from his embrace. A slight smile played on his lips, but his eyes remained steely, as if he did not accept refusals. Greg looked directly into Amanda's eyes, and she felt a slight chill come over her, despite the warm evening. What he said surprised her. Amanda's eyes went wide, and she looked at his face expecting to see a smirk or some hint that this was a joke. But Greg's expression was serious. She involuntarily glanced at his groin. What the hell? Did this stranger really expect her to just do what he asked? They were on the street. Anyone could see them from the road. She didn't even know him. It was supposed to be a simple meeting to talk and see if there was chemistry between them. And then she had to go to work. Amanda was stunned. She looked up at Greg's face, expecting to see a smirk or at least a hint of a joke. But his expression remained serious. But instead of turning away indignantly or laughing at the absurdity of the proposal, Amanda could not budge. She looked at him as if in a daze, and Greg, noticing her confusion, grinned. He knew what she was thinking about his proposal. He saw her look. Of course, she didn't mean to do that. The idea was simply absurd. No one in their right mind would do this on the street with the first person they meet. And why hasn't she left yet? Why did her gaze longer again? Go ahead, Greg nudged her gently. You want this. But I... Amanda tried to object, but her voice sounded weak and uncertain. That's enough, Greg interrupted her, calmly but firmly. Nobody forces you. If you didn't want to, you would have left a long time ago. But you're still here. He looked at her with such hunger and confidence that Amanda felt her heart begin to beat even faster. His words sounded like an order that could not be refused. You want it, he repeated. So do it. Amanda felt her head spin as if she had lost control of her body. Mark was quite surprised when the phone rang at 6:40 p.m. and Amanda's name flashed on the screen. Hello? He answered with a hint of concern in his voice. Is everything okay, honey? Why are you calling at this time? Amanda sounded worried and tense. I'm late, honey. I'm driving now. Mark's anxiety increased. Did something happen? Did you have an accident? Amanda's tone was full of shame. No, there was no accident. Dear, she sighed. I'm late because I just left Greg's. Mark was puzzled. From Greg? What do you mean? I thought you would meet at McDonald's. What happened? Amanda spoke quietly, as if she was ashamed. Greg wrote to me while I was on the road. He was late at work and said that he had not yet had time to take a shower and offered to meet at his house, since it was only 10 minutes from the exit. He said we could just hang out in the driveway. I agreed. Mark took a deep breath. Fine. You could have said this when you wrote that you were chatting. I know, Amanda exclaimed. When you wrote to me, I was about to leave. I thought that I would call you soon and tell you everything. Mark's voice became neutral, and he chose his words carefully. Then why are you late? You should have been at the hospital about 15 minutes ago. I don't remember you ever being late for work, Amanda. I don't understand. I don't understand it myself, honey, Amanda admitted sadly. I called work and said that I had a flat tire. They understood because I had never called with problems like this before. But you didn't have a flat tire, did you? Mark asked, slightly restraining his emotions. Amanda, what happened? Her voice was tense and full of regret. When I got ready to leave, I hugged him goodbye, and then I don't know what happened. I don't know why I did it. Wait, Mark couldn't believe his ears. You just had to meet to see if there was chemistry, and you went to his house and were intimate with him. Not really, Amanda began to explain. I did it right in the driveway. On the street, I don't know why. He told me to do it, and I just did it. Mark felt a mixture of irritation and some amusement, knowing how important it was for Amanda to always look perfect in public. So my perfect wife is late for work because she lied and is now dirty. Yes, Amanda admitted, clearly embarrassed. Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't intend to do this. I just couldn't refuse him. He sighed. I'm not mad at you for this. You know that you have almost complete freedom. The only problem is that you didn't tell me that your plans had changed. But I didn't plan to do this, she exclaimed in her defense. Maybe so, Mark agreed. But you went to his house, and I should have known this sooner. This is one of our conditions, and you know it. What if he turned out to be someone more dangerous, or an even bigger idiot than the one who simply demanded that you do what you did? Amanda agreed guiltily. You're right, dear. Sorry. I should have told you, and I'm sorry for doing this. He interrupted her. No, don't apologize for that. If you want to do this, that's fine. Did you enjoy it? Her voice was quiet. Yes, she admitted. Damn, Mark exclaimed. Well, that sounds hot. And you actually did it right in your driveway? Wow. I guess the only thing that annoys me is that I won't be able to play with you now. I'm glad you had fun. But next time, you can't hide anything from me after it's already happened. I have to know everything in advance, okay? Okay, honey, Amanda agreed. You are right. Well, apparently there is chemistry, right? Mark asked a little inappropriately. Amanda laughed. It seems like it. Full confession, he just texted me and invited me to his house on Saturday night. Mark shook his head. Well, apparently you have found yourself a new partner. In fact, Greg didn't just invite her, he told her that she should come to him at 8 in the evening and wear a sexy set of lingerie, as if he was completely confident that she would do as he said. But essentially, it was the same thing. Now Amanda had to try to get herself in order on the way to work. Saturday night had come to an end and Amanda had just finished getting ready to go out. She kissed the kids goodbye, telling them she was going to see a friend, then gave Mark a special kiss. I want you to be ready for me when I get back. Amanda had butterflies in her stomach as she drove to Greg's house. It was strange she knew he liked her, but she still couldn't quite figure out what to expect. And I still couldn't comprehend their first meeting. It was almost unreal. The blonde stopped at a gas station to use their restroom and bide her time so she wouldn't arrive too early. She bought chewing gum and chewed one stick to keep her breath as fresh as possible. Soon she was parking in Greg's driveway. She texted Mark at 7:55 p.m. I'm here, going inside, she wrote. I'll let you know when I return. If there is an opportunity, I will write in the process. Okay, came the answer. Love you. I love you too, she wrote in response. And it was true. Amanda still didn't understand where these impulses came from, but Mark's decision to open their marriage changed their relationship for the better. Smiling, she walked towards the house, planning how she would thank her husband later that night. The door was opened by a man wearing a tight t-shirt that showed off his muscular body. He greeted Amanda with a smile, but his eyes remained somewhat distant. After a polite hug and some small talk, a man named Greg offered to show Amanda the set of lingerie they had agreed on in advance. A little embarrassed, but ready for the meeting, Amanda obediently took off her outerwear, revealing lace lingerie. Greg, complimenting her appearance, took the initiative and their meeting became intimate. From the very beginning, his behavior was assertive and dominant, which, despite her experience, made Amanda feel vulnerable and incomprehensibly anxious. Everything that happened unfolded rapidly, and soon their relationship moved to the next stage. Amanda realized that she was not just physically reacting to Greg's actions, but was also psychologically affected by his confident and domineering behavior. He gave her instructions, which she, despite her inner confusion, obediently followed. Their interaction became deeper than just physical intimacy, and this gave her mixed feelings. Amanda wasn't exactly sure why she was so excited, but she was aware that Greg's behavior was causing her to react in an unexpected way. When the meeting ended, Amanda, although slightly unsettled, realized that this was an important moment for her. She was left wondering how this experience had changed the way she thought about herself and her needs. Everything that happened had a deep emotional and psychological resonance that she did not expect. The sex that night in the greenhouse was amazing. Conversations over the next few days tended to revolve around the nature of Amanda's encounters with Greg. Amanda always tried to be completely open and honest with Mark. She left no detail undisclosed. Mark was a little puzzled by how easily his wife fell under the control of this stranger. Amanda had always been an extremely strong-willed woman and found it difficult to talk about almost anything, unless it was something she was already prepared for. In the past, he himself tried to persuade her to have public sex on some floor, but to no avail, she always killed him. However, in Greg's case, she publicly scolded him, to the point of being late for work. And it only took one plea to convince her to comply. Likewise, Amanda was never shy about her personal comfort. If something hurt, she changed everything and was not shy about speaking up if necessary. And yet her back was stiff for days after her encounter with Greg's couch, as if the big man had cast some kind of spell on her, and Amanda was powerless to resist. In truth, she never tried to resist. Hell, she never even thought about resisting. She just found herself agreeing with everything Greg said, which was nice to hear, but also made Mark a little nervous. When he thought about this, his sense of control over life tended to evaporate and make him feel a little helpless. Despite this, he did not seriously consider challenging the new status quo. There was no denying that Amanda seemed to be on fire all the time now. It may have been the message from Greg that got her going, but Mark was the definite recipient of the reward. They had sex almost every day, even around Amanda's work schedule. And the sex was incredibly hot. When Amanda's next day off came, Greg texted her around lunchtime. "Come to work tonight. I have a break at 7:30. Pull into the parking lot, turn right, I'll be at the end, by the fence. Be sure to wear a sexy set. Address, 318 East Ridge Road." Amanda didn't know what to think. On the one hand, she was irritated by his impudence and the way he assumed she would show up. On the other hand, damn, she realized that she was already excited by the text alone. At first, Amanda realized that she had already started mentally going through her bra and panty sets to decide which one she should wear. What's wrong with her? Instead of responding to Greg, Amanda decided to write to her husband. "Greg wants me to come to his work tonight and meet him in the parking lot," she wrote. After a short delay, Mark answered. "What does he imply?" Amanda rolled her eyes. Of course, Mark couldn't be that stupid. "He didn't say, but he told me to wear a sexy bra and panties. So what time are you leaving? How long do you think you'll be gone?" asked the message from the husband. The blonde shook her head. It was crazy. This other guy just snapped his fingers and expected her to jump. Apparently, Mark assumed the same thing. And yet it seemed like the only natural reaction was to do what Greg asked. "He wants me there at 7:30, she replied. "This is his break, so I'm sure it won't last long." "Then I need to see you before you leave," Mark replied. "I think so," Amanda typed. "Cool. Maybe a blue set with flowers? Love you," came Mark's words. Well, damn. If Amanda had subconsciously hoped that her husband would give her a reason to change her mind, it wouldn't have happened. She guessed that she would still see Greg tonight. She began typing a response to the big man. Amanda pulled into the huge warehouse parking lot at 7:20. She followed Greg's instructions, turning right outside the gate and driving to the end of the passage. Finding his black Toyota, she stopped next to him and waited. The warehouse was located off a small highway. A chain-link fence covered in vines and the like at least provided some privacy from the road, but the ample parking lot could accommodate a lot of cars, even at this time of day. The only good thing was that the evening shift was short, which meant the chances of anyone approaching her car were low. Of course, the low level was not completely zero. The blonde mother glanced at her phone, wanting to hurry up and pass by. It was absolute madness. She had never fooled around in public, and then she showed up to this practical stranger at his work. She shifted in her seat, realizing that while she was nervous at the prospect of what was about to happen, she was also clearly excited by the idea. She didn't really understand why such things excited her now, when she had always been against it. A knock on the window brought Amanda out of her thoughts. Greg's intense eyes stared out her window as he smirked at her. He walked around and opened the passenger door, then climbed inside. "I don't know how I snuck up on you," he said, settling into the seat. "I wasn't that secretive." A light blush touched Amanda's cheeks as she shook her head. "Sorry, I think I got lost in thought," she replied. "About what?" he asked with a grin. Amanda found herself irritated by this impertinent attitude. Who does this guy think he is? She began to formulate an answer. Listen, Greg, He interrupted her. Did you do what I asked and wear a sexy set for me? His smirk turned into a teasing smirk. Come on, let me see, he urged. The blonde hesitated for a moment. She should tell him to go to hell, get out of the car, and then drive away until he decides he can be a little more respectful. But then those smoldering dark eyes bored into her soul, and she found herself giving in to his instructions. Slowly, the Greens began to adjust to the new normal of Greg, being Amanda's steady lover, her friend with benefits. A consistent pattern of events emerged in the coming weeks. Greg usually contacted him once or twice a week and essentially told Amanda when she would come see him next. Usually she went to his house, but from time to time he asked to do it in the parking lot at his work. Amanda realized that he listened to her schedule. He never suggested time that conflicted with family events or plans with Mark. But when Greg did offer time, he made it clear that he expected her to honor the request. Much of the arrangement was focused solely on sex, with Greg blurring the line of simply using Amanda for his pleasure without thinking about what she might want. With that being said, the blonde never felt like she was being mistreated or that she should complain. His strong, intense personality flipped some switch inside of her that she didn't even know existed. She found that she immediately complied with almost any request he made without thinking about it. However, the more time she spent with the man, the more they opened up and began to talk about sex. She told him everything about her husband, children, her work, her hobbies. He was much less enthusiastic about sharing himself, although he opened up more and more over time. She found out that he wasn't dating anyone or even trying to date anyone. Greg seemed content with a simple job, a few hobbies, and fairly regular visits from Amanda to relieve his sexual tension. However, even though they shared with each other, sex was always the focus. Months passed, and with the exception of the one or two times Amanda and Mark picked up a random guy to have sex with, Amanda found herself no longer playing around with anyone. Greg seemed to satisfy her need to seek sex outside of marriage, and although he never said it outright, it was clear that he didn't really want her fooling around with other men. She knew he was still not seeing anyone. The only sex he had was with her. Unfortunately, they were never able to arrange sex with Greg. When Amanda first broached the subject, he told her he was willing to do it, but it seemed like whenever the Greens managed to get a full-time nanny, the ex-Marine's schedule never lined up with theirs. Of course, they only tried a couple of times, but since they failed to organize a joint meeting, Mark felt a slight note of anxiety in an already excellent situation. And the fact is that the situation was excellent. Ever since Amanda started dating Greg, she always seemed to be in the mood, and Mark benefited from it. Amanda seemed much less reserved, much more willing to accommodate Mark's every desire. He would be a fool to complain about the heat or the frequency of their sex life, which had increased markedly and remained the same. Amanda had promised to make it a priority to have sex with him and Greg, and Mark didn't want to upset the good things they had, so he agreed to back off and give her some time to coordinate their schedules. The biggest driving factor in Amanda becoming more open and accommodating to Mark's sexual desires was her time with Greg. The big man practically never asked for anything. Instead, he simply told Amanda what he wanted or what they were going to do, and she agreed to almost everything without question or hesitation. He tried to respect real boundaries, but otherwise he seemed to view her almost as a toy with which he could satisfy himself. Since the blonde knew that she was allowing her lover to dictate almost their entire sex life, she would hate to deny Mark for the sake of his own desires. In truth, she didn't mind taking care of her husband as an ex-Marine. It was just that their relationship dynamic was different. They had a different chemistry. Mark tried to act dominant at times, but he wasn't physically imposing like Greg, and he didn't have the same personality as the big man. Although she would never turn him down, Mark's efforts in this area simply did not resonate with Amanda as well as Greg's. Mark was kind, sincere, and thoughtful. He absolutely idolized Amanda and would do anything for her. He simply would never think of asking his wife to do something he knew she wouldn't enjoy. Greg, on the other hand, whatever came to his mind, he acted or ordered her to do. That was until she became so terribly ill. It all started with a rather ordinary meeting at Greg's house on a Saturday evening. It was a fairly typical series of events. By Monday evening, Amanda had a full-blown urinary tract infection. She had to work Tuesday and Wednesday, but she went ahead and called her doctor and made an appointment. Unfortunately, he was unable to receive her until Friday. In the meantime, she poured water to try to fight the infection. On her way to work Tuesday, she stopped at a gas station and bought some cranberry juice, hoping to ease the situation until she could get to the doctor. She dealt with this before what woman hadn't, but she had to admit that the situation was getting worse as the week went on. Amanda practically fell to her death as soon as she got home from work on Thursday morning. She texted Mark that she had a fever, was taking ibuprofen, and was going to sleep as much as she could. He knew she must have been very ill because she could barely stay awake that evening. On her first night off, Amanda usually tried to at least get up and watch TV with him and the kids. Sometime after midnight, Mark woke up to find Amanda's temperature had risen to 105.1 degrees Fahrenheit. With the threat of brain damage very real, Mark dragged his wife into the bathroom and took a warm bath. He gave her medication to fight her fever, but told her in no uncertain terms that if the bath didn't bring her fever down, they would have to go to the emergency room, and that was the last thing she wanted to do. He stroked her hair and held her hand while she cried in the bath. Her burning flesh seemed to be immersed in icy knives. He offered and even argued to take her to the hospital, but Amanda begged for a chance to take a bath. Just take it until they saw her doctor the next morning. Luckily, the combination of the bath and the medication brought her temperature down to 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit, still quite high for an adult, but no longer at a dangerous level. Mark spent the rest of the night in restless sleep, setting his alarm every hour to wake up and check his wife's temperature. The next morning, Mark left work to pick up Amanda and take her to the doctor's office, who was too lethargic to drive on her own. The doctor looked at her ashen face and began drawing blood once he was done with her vitals. Her urine culture confirmed the infection, and a very severe one at that. From there, the doctor ordered a CT scan of Amanda's abdomen and then returned with a diagnosis. You have pyelonephritis, a very dangerous kidney infection resulting from a serious urinary tract infection, he explained. The E. coli culture is through the roof, and that's why you feel so bad. He looked over his glasses at Amanda. You are a nurse, so you know very well that there should be no E. coli in these regions. Given your history and level of education, I suspect that proper hygiene is not an issue, which means the bacteria were introduced, most likely through sexual contact. Amanda made a sound as if in protest, but he raised his hand to prevent an argument. I'm not judging you, Amanda. I'm telling you to be more careful. Pyelonephritis is not something you can play with. You could lose your kidney. You might die. At best, you're probably looking at a few months for your kidneys to heal properly. I want to put you on Roman 4 antibiotics for at least one night. This thing is really holding you back. At the same time, Amanda protested and eventually convinced the doctor to hang an Roman 4 bag in his office in the hope that this would give her a chance to avoid hospitalization. The doctor chuckled and hesitated, but out of professional politeness did as she asked. He allowed her to leave only a few hours later, after he decided that her complexion and temperature were better, and after he received promises that she would take antibiotics exactly as scheduled and that she would immediately will inform to the emergency room if her temperature rose above 103 degrees Fahrenheit. And even then, he only allowed her to leave after another reminder that she could die if she didn't follow his instructions. Mark was kind and patient, caring for his wife with great care, tenderness, and care. But on Saturday night, as it became clear she was responding to treatment, his behavior became more assertive. Amanda, he told her, this can't happen again. I don't know how much power this guy has over you, but you can't just agree with everything he says. You're so much smarter than that. You could have died. You're right, but... She tried to object, but he cut her off. No, not today, he said firmly. This cannot happen again. I'm serious. I will write to Greg and explain this to him in no uncertain terms on my own behalf. If he has a problem with it, then maybe it's time for me to rest the veto." Amanda sighed. "Fine. I'm really sorry. You're right," she agreed. So Mark did just that. He revealed the whole essence of the problem. He explained what happened and why, and made sure Greg understood it couldn't happen again. Mark was slightly surprised when he received a response to his message quite quickly. The tone was even more surprising. "Hi, Mark. Thank you for letting me know," the message said. "I'm very glad that she is feeling better. I'm so sorry. I would never want to hurt Amanda. Sometimes I can be a dumbass and just get caught up in the moment and not think. I hope you know that I never meant to hurt her. I will be more careful in the future." Mark didn't know if he could have asked for a better answer. Despite this, he decided to strike while the iron was hot. He looked at Amanda. "I want you to talk about threesomes again. You've never been with a guy this long that I haven't dated or played with. If he wants to keep seeing you, he needs to make it happen. I was patient, but he really screwed up here. He needs to show integrity." Amanda nodded. This was a completely fair demand on the part of her husband. Apparently, Greg agreed and quickly replied that he would be happy to do it as soon as she wanted. It took Amanda a few days to really feel like herself again. Her first shift or two at work definitely found that she had a little less gas in the tank than usual. Greg waited a week and a half before trying to make any appointments, and when he called the first time, it was atypical for him to ask, not demand, that she come. When she did, he became a much more reserved version of himself, much more concerned with her comfort and preferences than he had ever been in the past. While it was nice to know that he cared, it also made the whole atmosphere of the meeting unnecessary. She found that she definitely craved his casual dominance. To her credit, Amanda didn't leave until 2 weeks later, when she had a firm commitment to have sex with Greg and Mark. These 2 weeks flew by quite quickly. Amanda took a couple of extra shifts to save some money for her vacation. While the bonus money wasn't bad, it meant she was a walking zombie until she added a few extra dedicated sleep blocks into her schedule. Each of the kids had a sleepover, which Mark handled like a pro. His own work schedule was busy enough that before the Greens knew it, Saturday had arrived. Soon they waved goodbye to the children at Grandma's house and headed out to dinner. After that, it was planned to go to Greg to finally realize this sex. Amanda tried to remain calm on the outside, but inside she was filled with nervousness. How would Mark react when he saw the interaction between her and Greg? This wasn't the usual come and have sex situation. She'd never been with a guy where they had such defined roles, and she was worried that Mark might be jealous or offended by her reaction. She tried to prepare Mark for how her dynamic worked with a big man, as she didn't want him to be surprised if her husband saw a new side of her. Mark smiled. "Baby, I understand things are a little different between you two," he told her. "As long as I know you're mine when we leave there, I won't worry about it." Amanda smiled warmly back. She loved Mark with all her heart and hoped that he wouldn't perceive this sexual chemistry between her and Greg as something that wasn't there. "Hope this won't be a problem." The Greens arrived at Greg's house shortly before 9 p.m. Both Mark and Amanda were very nervous. Mark made a mental note that if a similar situation arose sometime in the future, he would insist on it much sooner. The big man greeted them at the door, shaking Mark's hand firmly and hugging Amanda tightly. He then showed them around the house, and Mark grinned at the chance to see in person the couch that had caused so many back pains. And yet there was little reason for pretense. Just a few minutes later, all three found themselves in the former Marine's bedroom. They were having sex when they heard the sound of the front door slamming. "Greg," called a female voice from the living room. "Damn it," the big man exclaimed. "Becca?" "Wait, I have guests." Confused, Mark looked at the big man. "This is my sister," he explained. "Damn, I didn't know she was planning on crashing here tonight. I knew she was in town, but she usually stays with a friend. Wait, let me tell her." But Amanda had already stood up and grabbed her clothes. "No," she replied. I wouldn't think it would be right to force her to leave or anything, but I won't be able to relax and continue having sex here knowing that she's home." She laughed. "Look, this will break the ice. Maybe we can try again soon, okay?" That seemed like the most reasonable answer. As they all got dressed, Greg intervened, and Mark and Amanda left the house, feeling a little like criminals on some kind of illicit date, heading into the night. The next few days were interesting in the greenhouse. On the one hand, Mark was relieved to see that there were no emotional connections. Amanda showed no signs that would raise any alarm bells in Mark's mind. She was obviously visiting Greg for sex, but it was just sex. What bothered Mark was that Amanda was describing how she seemed to do almost everything the big man wanted, and that Greg had some kind of romantic power over Amanda. After seeing the two of them together, Mark no longer had any doubts or worries that this was the case. There were no shared glances, no additional touching, no changes in tone or behavior. He had no doubt that Amanda had some feelings for Greg. On the other hand, Mark found it incredibly difficult to see his wife react sexually to another man the way she did to Greg. She would do almost anything the big man wanted. To her credit, Amanda was clearly aware of how difficult it was to see. She suggested stopping seeing Greg immediately, cutting him off for good. However, Mark did not want this. He wanted Amanda to be happy and satisfied, even if he himself couldn't get the same reactions from his wife's body that the ex-Marine could get. Additionally, he and his wife's sex life was better than ever. He didn't want to change the dynamic and risk ruining what they had. So, after a serious and in-depth conversation, real introspection, and deep exchange of opinions, they agreed to leave it as is. Everything was fine for another 2 months. The first problem arose when Amanda was called into work on the day she was scheduled to go in for her annual checkup with her women's doctor. She called the doctor to let them know, but there was a problem with the rescheduling. The doctor was going on vacation the following month, and the practice was already short one doctor, meaning the remaining doctors had to split up patients until a new one arrived. This wouldn't be so bad, but Amanda had already received the last call on her current prescription, and the doctor refused to write a new prescription without an examination. Although this was extremely disappointing, there was little that could be done about it. She and Mark agreed that they would just be careful, but Greg remained. Amanda was fairly confident that this wouldn't be a problem. However, it was worth serious discussion, and Mark felt a little uneasy about it. As it turned out, the former Marine just laughed when Amanda told him about the need. "Baby," he explained, "I don't see it really making a difference, but I'll be careful." When Amanda relayed the conversation, Mark felt much better, especially because Greg had kept his word after sex. The second problem was Women's Day. Soon enough, they all found balance with this new normal. Overall, life was good, the sex was hot, and the Greens got along great. There seemed to be no end to this golden age of their marriage. So if you go to Walker's facility first thing in the morning, you can slip past the house and see me for a few minutes before I go to bed. It's unlikely your boss will ever find out, Amanda told Mark, by phone. The plan was solid. Going to Walker's place meant Mark would literally drive right down the interstate exit leading to his house. Amanda will be home no later than 8 in the morning. If he gets to work early and goes to Walker first, he can stop by, see his wife, and then have sex with her before she gets off her shift the night before. In fact, Mark was a little surprised that Amanda was willing to sacrifice sleep. This was her third shift in a row, and she had to go on her fourth shift this week. Usually, she was only ready to sleep after the third shift, not to mention the fact that the fourth was in the wings. Apparently, the refusal of protection gave her a serious blow to her wishes. Naturally, Mark was unlikely to complain, so plans were made. The next morning, after he left work, and at the same time Amanda was supposed to leave the hospital, his cell phone started ringing and Amanda was on caller ID. "Hi, baby," she greeted him tiredly. "How are you?" he asked. "Do you still want me to meet you at home?" About this, she fell silent. "Greg contacted me. He asked me to come over to his place this morning for something to eat." Of course, I won't if you don't want me to, but Mark sighed. He'd be lying if he said he wasn't disappointed that she'd even consider seeing another guy instead of him. So, what's the plan then? He asked. I think I'll see you tonight. Oh, baby, I still want to see you this morning, Amanda explained. I just thought I could stop by his house and come home, and you could still stop by and see me later. Mark would be lying even more if he pretended that their best sex didn't happen after Amanda met another guy. And yet, will she wake up for him? He expressed concern. Sounds hot, baby, he offered, but I'm afraid you'll fall when you get home. I don't want to keep you. I know you're on fourth shift today. No, Amanda objected. Baby, I want it. I made plans with you. I'm not leaving you. I just thought it would be really weird if I saw Greg first. Don't worry, I'll tell him I can't. Mark chuckled. No, I'm being stupid. You're right, it would be hot. We've never done it this way. Go see him and then wait for me. I can't imagine that it would take me too long anyway, he replied. This is cool, Amanda stated in a sultry tone. Mark laughed. Sounds like a plan, baby. Go, I'll hurry to Walker, and I'll see you soon. Love you. I love you too, Amanda replied. Amanda pulled up to Greg's house just before 8 a.m. and texted Mark before heading into the house. At Greg's on my way, she typed, See you soon, love you. I love you too, came Mark's response. Have fun. The blonde smiled tiredly as she approached Greg's porch. As promised in his message, the door was unlocked and she entered. Greg, she called. Here, came a voice from the bedroom. Good. They will get straight to the point, given her extreme fatigue. You know, he said in a low, husky tone, I tell you all the time how sexy you are. What an incredible body you have. How hot you are. This is all true, of course. He stopped, his deep brown eyes meeting her own blue eyes. But I don't actually tell you how beautiful you are, and I really should. You truly are a beautiful woman, Amanda. For the first time since Greg's situation had become new, Amanda felt caught off guard. She hesitated, trying to answer, but the big man surprised her again with a kiss. Kissing itself was nothing new. But this kiss was different. Today, everything was different. Amanda, I love you, he declared in a tone filled with deep emotion. Amanda's eyes widened. Later, looking back, Amanda wished she had paid more attention to the signs, that she understood what was happening. Greg finally looked at her again. You are another man's wife, he said in a hoarse tone. I know that. I would never want to hurt you. I don't want to destroy your marriage or destroy your family. But, he paused and looked at her intently, I love you. Thank you. Amanda's head swam with recognition. She was more than sure that Greg had been drinking. He never behaved like this. How the hell was she supposed to react now? God, why did she let herself get so carried away? She needed to get up, clean herself up, and go home. Greg then leaned down and kissed her again. It was about 10 in the morning when Amanda pulled up to the house. Mark was already there, pulling back the sheets and turning on the fan to eliminate the white noise. Amanda walked up the stairs and shuffled into the house and bedroom. She was always very tired after the third shift in a row. Today, she also lost another 2 hours of sleep and at the same time spent a lot of energy having sex with Greg. She was so tired that raising her arms seemed like a tedious task. Mark carefully helped his wife take off her robe and underwear. Amanda, what happened? He asked in a soft tone. I was waiting for you at home 45 minutes ago. You should have had a quick chat with Greg and then come to my house before bed. You wasted a lot of time and you weren't careful. Amanda's eyes turned red as she answered. I know, baby. I know. Sorry. He was very strange this morning. I've never seen Greg like this. She paused, as if searching for words. Mark decided to give his wife a chance to explain herself. He told me he loved me, she said flatly. He has never hinted at anything like this before. I think he was drinking. But he told me he loved me, and he did it. Mark felt the room spin as she confirmed the worst. Amanda, he exclaimed, you're not taking pills now. What were you thinking about? I don't know, she almost moaned in response. I'm used to doing what he wants, but he's always so careful. I didn't think so. I was fascinated by it. Baby, I'm sorry. I'm so tired. Mark's mouth was dry. This is probably a really unsafe time for you. Damn it. You must have gotten pregnant. Please don't be angry, the blonde begged. Everything will be fine. It only happened once. She paused. Well, twice. Twice? Mark exclaimed. What the hell? I'm really sorry, she replied. I'm really sorry. I didn't know he was going to do it the first time. Amanda, it's so risky. What will you do if you carry his child? He demanded. I'm sorry, Amanda began to cry. I didn't want this to happen. We'll figure it out, baby. You and me. I'm just so tired. Mark, I have to be there to pick up the kids in 5 hours. Please, baby, I'm sorry, please. Can we talk about this later? Mark sighed. Suddenly, it was as if Amanda had just realized, oh, baby, I promised you sex too. I'm so sorry. I'm just so tired. Mark, I know the rules, but I have to drive. I have to take care of patients. Maybe we'll wait until I need some sleep before work this evening. Could you take care of it here, next to me, please? There was no way Mark would ever hurt his wife, even if he was scared and disgusted by the bad choices she made. Yes, baby. Sleep now, he replied. 4 weeks have passed since Greg had unprotected sex with Amanda, and she still hasn't gotten her period. 3 weeks later, she again tried to argue that there was nothing to worry about since her cycles had not yet returned to normal. After 4 weeks, the dizziness and cramping really started, and Amanda became concerned. The home pregnancy test allowed 5 minutes to read the test. The second pink line was visible in less than 2. Amanda tried to suggest that the baby might still be Mark's. After all, the exit was not 100% effective. But the fact was that despite his dirty talk about running Amanda over, Mark was very careful. Amanda was pregnant, there was no doubt about it. There was also no doubt that there was a father, and it was not her husband. Amanda sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the pregnancy test in her hands, trying to comprehend what was happening. This was not the result she expected or wanted. How could she end up in such a situation? How did she let it get this far? Her thoughts were confused between fear and guilt. She knew what she would do next. She would have to talk to Mark. But that didn't make the prospect any easier. He deserved to know the truth, and she knew it would be painful. Taking a deep breath, Amanda placed the test on the nightstand and headed downstairs, where Mark was doing his daily business. Her heart was beating fast, and she knew that the moment of truth had come. She approached him, still feeling an unbearable heaviness in her chest. Mark, she began, her voice quiet but trembling. He turned to her, seeing the expression on her face, and his smile slowly faded. Did something happen? He asked, starting to feel that something was wrong. Amanda tried to find words, but tears began to form in her eyes. Mark, I'm pregnant, she said, fighting back tears. He froze, comprehending what he had heard. Mark felt his heart squeezing, but he already knew the answer to his next question. Is this Greg? He asked quietly, his voice full of bitterness and disappointment. Amanda nodded, unable to say another word. She knew this was the moment their relationship would change forever. She didn't know how Mark would react or what would happen next, but she was prepared for the worst. Mark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world fall on his shoulders. He loved Amanda with all his heart, but this was a test he never thought he would have to endure. We need to think about what to do next, he said finally, his voice firm but calm. It's not the end of the world, but it will change a lot, and we need to figure out how we will live with this. Amanda, although expecting the worst, felt relieved by his words. It wasn't the end, but they both knew their lives would be different now. Mark hugged Amanda, and they stood in silence, knowing that many difficult decisions lay ahead. Their marriage was at a crossroads, but their love and commitment to each other still remained. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the